Shalom, brothers and sisters. Welcome to my channel. So I am going to cover, I'm kind of picking up where I left off in my lecture last week on the tribe of Levi, so-called tribe of Levi, which I showed you in my previous video, was not the name of our ancestors from the tribe and the descendants of the son of Aaron. That simply just wasn't their name. And to pick up where we left off in that series, I want to discuss even the book of Leviticus today regarding the ritual sacrifices that according to the book of Leviticus was required of our ancestors. So for example, the burnt offerings. Now I'm not saying all of the offerings were not requirements. The grain offerings, probably was more than likely a requirement of our people. But when we start talking about the ritual sacrifices of burnt offerings, that's in communion offerings. Some of the communion offerings is kind of where it gets a little bit strange. That I don't know, when I was reading the book of Leviticus over the years, in the beginning when I started reading it a few years ago, it really didn't occur to me. And as I began reading it most recently, I guess within the last year, there were just things that I noticed that just didn't make any sense. So for example, there were a lot of when you start talking about blood sacrifices, some of the things that I found very strange was the sacrifices of animals where the blood was being splashed over the altar. And then there's some references in the scriptures where it talks about the blood being sacrificed on the altar where horns were on the altar in some passages of the scripture, which to me, when I was reading it, and I'm not going to go into every passage or verse, but it's in the scriptures, and it was just things like that just didn't make any sense to me. I'm like, horns on the altar, what's going on here? And I was just getting some really bad visuals. It just didn't make sense to me. And then it also occurred to me, back to what I had stated earlier in some of my other videos, is that we are reading a translation. It really doesn't matter what translation we read, but we're reading a translation that was deliberately mistranslated from our enemies. And whole sections have been removed. There has been books, hundreds of books that have been removed, as well as there were things that have been added, and a lot of alterations have been made by the engineers that have corrupted the writings of our people, which happen to be Freemasons and Jesuits. And if you understand the history of the people that have done the translations over the years, you'll understand that fact that they are of a Luciferian cult. Okay, and yeah, it's kind of hard to believe if you don't really understand the history of the scriptures. Baal, okay, if you look at Bible, it's Baal, B-A-L-L-A-L, and there's a reason why they call it Bible, because that's what, if you think about it, that's what it is really saying. It's because it's been corrupted. That's why I don't use the term Bible. I rather say scriptures. However, a lot of the truth of the original writings of our people is still there, but you have to understand it in order to lift the veil and understand the language of our people in order to really understand what has been written. So in a nutshell, what I want to talk about here is that what I'm saying to you is that the section on burnt offerings that talks about a lot of ritual sacrifices. I mean, for example, there's a section that talks about well, I'm just going to read this section first just so you understand. Leviticus chapter 1 verse 5. In verse 5 it says, the bull shall then be slaughtered before the Most High and Aaron's sons. The priest shall offer its blood by splashing it on all sides of the altar, which is at the entrance of the tent of meeting. So I'm going to stop right there. So it's things like that when it's constantly talking about blood sacrifice. And then, one of the things that really just didn't make sense to me is you have to understand the people and nations around us were engaging in a lot of ritualistic blood sacrifices and burnt offerings, where they were offering their children, food, and everything to these false deities in their lands. And unfortunately, some of our ancestors were following the ways of those nations around them, and they were punished for it. So it wouldn't really make sense that our Father in heaven, the Most High, would demand the same thing of our people in terms of not those type of sacrifices, but burnt offering sacrifices, to the extent that it has been explained in the book of Leviticus. And even there's a section in Leviticus that talks about 2 goat offerings as a sin offering. And in those, there's various types of offerings. And in, these burnt offerings, there's also something called a sin offering, where there's 2 goats that the sons of Aaron have to cast lots. And one lot, and I think I covered that before, one lot is for one goat is for the sins of the people, and the other lot, in terms of when they cast the lot, the other goat goes out. They were to send that goat out into the wilderness to Azazel. And if you know who Azazel is, I mean, it just doesn't make sense. So, and I covered that actually in one of my videos, talks about Azazel. So there was just too many things that just didn't make sense. So, after further research, I think I came to understand something very important. So if we go to the book of Jeremiah, so if we go to Jeremiah chapter 7, verse, let's see, verse 22 through 23, it says right here, "In speaking to your ancestors on the day I brought them out of the land of Egypt, I gave them no command concerning burnt offering or sacrifice. This rather is what I commanded them. Listen to my voice, then I will be your God, and you shall be my people. Walk exactly in the way I command you, so that you may prosper." Now, let's look at that in, there's several translations, obviously, of it. Let's look at it in a Jewish translation. The reason why is because these are the people pretending to be us, but I want to look at it in their translation. So it says, because this is supposedly from the Hebrew, where it really isn't, but it says, "For I didn't speak to your ancestors or give them orders concerning burnt offerings or sacrifices when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. Rather, what I did order them was this: pay attention to what I say, then I will be your God and you will be my people. In everything, live according to the way that I order you, so that things will go well for you." So, saying the same thing, right? Just a little bit differently. So why is all this important to understand? Well, first of all, the reason why it's very, very important to understand is that we are reading, again, a translation from our enemies. And because the people that have translated, again, were Jesuits and Freemasons that are of the Luciferian cult, okay, because they're following their father Lucifer, because they're of the serpent seed, that you are getting a mistranslation. That was, the writings of our people have been corrupted and compromised, and I keep, telling this to you and I'm going to drill it as many times as I have to and show you the proof, okay? Because I say always look to the scriptures. It's not what I say, it's what's in the scriptures, correct? So, on one hand, we're reading in the book of Leviticus. Again, Leviticus, what's the root of that? Levi, and you know what that word Levi means, right? I showed you that last week. And yet, in the book of Jeremiah, who was a prophet that the Most High sent out to our people, okay, to help them come back into the ways of the Most High, and this is what Jeremiah was saying to our people. So, that should answer your question. Was sacrifice, demanded from our was it demanded by the Most High? Was it given to our people as instructions? Well, it's not about what the book of Leviticus says, because the origins of the book of Leviticus, now that you understand that our people, there was no tribe called Levi, right? From the sons of Aaron. However, Most High gave us instructions. He gave us laws, instructions to follow, but it had nothing to do with burnt offerings, is what Jeremiah is telling us here. So yeah, one of the things you hear often is, yeah, there's contradictions, but who put those contradictions in there? Is because in their failed attempt to rewrite the history of our people, they made a lot of mistakes along the way. And here it is, case in point. So again, brothers and sisters, we're going to keep this going. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe to my channel. Share the truth with our people to help get them out of Christianity so they understand that they are being taught by pagans, okay, in their way, which is idolatry. And think about it. What is going on in Christianity? What do they talk about a lot? What do you hear pastors say? Some of these pastors that they have been, that people, Gentiles have been washed in the blood of the Lamb. Do you hear that? Well, what's the lamb really? The lamb is a goat. Right? Washed in the blood of the Lamb. So they constantly are talking about sacrifice. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. We're going to keep this series going, help you to understand the lies about the Greek Testament that they call the New Testament, and all this washed in the blood of the Lamb and what all that means, because that's just all riddled in paganism and idolatry, which relates back to the whole Babylonian ancient system and religions, what they call the Mystery Babylon religions. That's all Christianity is. It's just another form of paganism and cult worship. Okay, so we'll talk about that. I'm going to keep this lecture going and series going, but thank you so much for tuning in, and share it with our Israelite brethren. Please get the word out, help our people to understand the truth, and may the Most High bless.